there's definitely a way men talk to each other that's different when there's a woman there, when there's not.
Guys can just throw their whole morals out of the window just to be involved and included. Like, you don't want to kill the vibe, innit?
You know, we're all products of our environment, right? Being able to call that out, that can be very difficult.
Men will put their head in the sand sometimes. I think we've definitely got privilege problems.
If somebody said to me, oh, you should smile more, I'd be like, mind your own business.
You need to understand that there's more accountability, there's more responsibility on you.
Just consider the way you're interacting with somebody.
Hey, beautiful, give us a smile. Bet you look much prettier when you smile. Aye, don't ignore me. Come on, love. Think you're better than me, yeah? You're not even that fit.
So what, you're not going to invite me now?
Yeah, you're asking for it dressed like that.
Are we off tonight? She definitely wants it.
Oh, he's sexy.
Do you think this is okay?
So what were your initial thoughts about watching that? Did it surprise you? Is it what you expected?
That's the worst thing about it. It's current, it's prevalent, it's there all the time. And it shouldn't be. It's disgusting, really, isn't it? Yeah. The percentage on that, it's staggering. I've probably been exposed to it myself. But then I've not actioned it myself, and I feel a little bit guilty that I haven't. I've got sisters, I've got mums who have probably experienced that. It's just makes me really reflect.
I mean, one thing for me that sort of hit home to me is the accumulation. Like, at the end of a day, where this woman just wants to get on with the day, how worn down she must have been having to face all that, and sort of just one after another, and you just and then you have a situation where somebody's saying, "Why aren't you smiling?"
Yeah.
And it's like, why does she owe him a smile?
Exactly. It's crazy. You know? Yeah, I don't know, man. It's crazy because it's actually common now that I see that there's a lot of situations and scenarios there. I was thinking that happens a lot. Sometimes I feel like, why can't men just see themselves from another perspective, a other point of view? It's like, yo, if your mum was even watching you now, you're watching what you do, what do you think she'll say? Kind of like, no, man, she'd be calm with it. If I hear that, I'm thinking, wait, your mum will be calm with you speaking like that to another woman, screaming these things like what she said, what the guy said to that lady, you're not even that fit. Where did that come from? Do you know what I'm saying? But
it's so interesting the way it flips.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, straight away it becomes an aggressive thing. Yeah, and again, like that's not to say that the initial encounter is okay, but as soon as she essentially does nothing. Yeah. She doesn't react in a negative way, but suddenly he gets quite aggressive about it.
Exactly. The silence was enough for him enough to stir his anger inside of him and just be like, oh, she's ignoring me. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, whoa. Now she's gonna hear. She's having to like hear what you have to say now. Vent your anger to her. Like, she did nothing. She's done nothing, and she's still receiving this abuse. It's crazy.
Is there anything that surprised you in that video?
Sadly not. I mean, I think, like you both said, like, you know, in an ideal world, so to speak, we would all be horrified and shocked by that. But the fact that none of us really are, it just illustrates how commonplace it is and insidious, and it can be quite subtle, right? It doesn't have to be big, like angry, explosive gestures. These like comments, these looks, unwanted, unsolicited attention. And again, like, for me, it goes back to this kind of entitlement, you know, that anyone, men in this case, think that they have a right to treat someone like that, right? With a lack of respect, a lack of dignity. And that there's this disconnect from, like, well, how would you feel if someone treated you like that, spoke to you like that, touched you without your consent? Unfortunately, we shouldn't have to think like, well, you know, I've got a sister, I've got a mother, a girlfriend, like a wife. It shouldn't be that. It should just be a case of like, I wouldn't want to be treated like that, you know?
Yeah, they're a human being. So,
right. Yeah. So...
And also, you don't want a situation where like a woman's walking down the street and she's thinking, I hope this guy's got a mum, I hope this guy's got a kid. Do you know what I mean? So hopefully they'll be able to relate to me as like a real person rather than an object.
Yeah. Hopefully this will open up more conversations like this, but I know it can be difficult, and a lot of men aren't comfortable, and it never seems like it's the right time or place, you know? So hopefully it'll also bring about some positive change.
It's interesting. Again, with a lot of replies to videos like this, you'll get so men can't talk to women now, and it's not really about that. It's about just realizing how you interact with people and how that makes them feel. And it's not about it's not like you're at school and you're being told off. It's about like just think, just sort of just consider how that person feels.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think men will put their head in the sand sometimes and go defensive mode. They don't like confrontation. It's not my problem. It's the other person's problem, and pin it back on the other person. In this case, obviously a woman. I think we've definitely got privilege problems. I think we systemically believe we are the superior gender, and a lot of people don't want to lose that tag. I think you just educate yourself. I think that's the biggest thing you need to do, is go away and reflect on your own actions. But yeah, I think we need to address that kind of before we've even had the conversation, is why we think that certain way.
Yeah. And what do you think it is about men where, some men where they feel the need to immediately get very defensive, and it's almost like a case of like, oh, a man is being criticised for something, I must defend men because I am a man. Like, what do you think? What do you think the thinking is behind that? Why is there a type of person that reacts in that way?
Well, let's say like when you're growing up, you're trying to understand like what's going on. Like, I'm here now. I'm a man. This is what I identify as, isn't it? It's like what comes with being me. Or I guess that obviously growing up in my household is like the man has to be the head of the house, isn't it? So you're instantly given that kind of power, but you don't know how to handle it. So it's like, okay, well, I got power then. I guess anything that I say goes. No matter how it sounds, no matter how it feels, like the caring aspect's gone. Whereas if you grow up like that, then it's like you need to understand that there's more accountability, there's more responsibility on you. You gotta be careful when you like look at it from like I got power. Anything I say goes. Because it's like you're just gonna forget that there's another gender there. Females, women, like it's like rah.
It's not a case of saying you have broken the law here, or you have done something necessarily evil or anything. It's just saying just consider the way you're interacting with somebody. If they're feeling uncomfortable, then just think: is it worth? Are you going to be so defensive that you ignore that and ignore somebody's feelings just because you feel attacked? In some ways it's a strange reaction, isn't it?
Yeah, people need to think twice before they speak, because it's like you're not thinking at all. You're just going to say something out of the blue. You didn't think it through. You didn't care about the other person's feelings, how their response might be. So it can just come off like blah. Then all that stuff that you said is like, right, that was kind of derogatory. That was kind of rude. But in your heart, you might feel like I meant no harm in that. This is normal to me. But if you think about it, then you might take out some words, you might take out how you approach it, and then it ends up being like a more cleaner greetings, because first impressions do count to me as well. And instantly that woman might think like, nah. Then that's when it comes to like that in the video, it's like the guy was like getting ignored. But, hi, you all right? Like, I forgot what you said in it. It was like, what did the guy say to the girl when she was walking back?
I think he said something about smiling, and when she didn't,
yeah,
he was like,
you should smile more or something like that. I was thinking, that's not even how you start a conversation with someone you've never met.
Also, he doesn't know what her day's been like. Maybe she don't feel like smiling.
Exactly,
Maybe she had a tough day.
Maybe she had a tough day, man. Like, just, hi, you all right? Like, I don't know, like, just the tone of your voice, the first thing that you say to her, let her feel more welcome. But right there and then, it's like, she essentially knew your motives, kind of like, you should smile more.
Well, it's also interesting how would men react if they had that sort of question? Because if somebody said to me, "Oh, you should smile more," I'd be like, "Mind your own business." Whereas I don't like again, it's a case of, do women have that luxury to? Because like watching that, I wouldn't know how to react. If I was in her situation, I would not know how to react in those scenarios to make things better for myself. And I suppose there is no way of acting this way or that, because you can't win.
Yeah, I think, we're all products of our environment, right? So we're conditioned from when we're very young, what we see at home, in the media, at school, the role models we have. And for me, but it just goes back to that like lack of empathy. And I think it's because there's this kind of crisis with men, like you know, a lot of us don't really know who we are, where we fit and where we belong, what our role is, you know, whereas before, like we discussed, you know, perhaps it was more clearly defined, right? Head of the household, provider, and that's not the case now. And I think that's perhaps why, we have these issues around, you know, kind of mental health challenges, depression, anxiety, self-harm and suicide. And, you know, that's kind of, I think that's all exacerbated as well if you have issues around, you know, self-image and confidence, you know, if you think you have to look a certain way, have a particular job, earn a certain income, drive a, you know, a specific car, all these things, you know, whatever we think we attribute to being a man, you know, what a man's role is in society, in the home, in a relationship. And again, it just goes back to like many of us don't know how to open up, be vulnerable. And the first emotion we go to or manifestation of that is anger and violence. And unfortunately, sometimes that's directed to the people who are just the nearest to us, even if it's just a random stranger. Instead of actually sitting and exploring like, well, why do I feel like that? Why do I think like that? And how can I come up with some healthy kind of tools to kind of express that?
We spoke before about the perceived weakness of women. Like that's, I think as you experience life and you have interactions with various people in your life, you realize that that's simply not true. I mean, certainly like what you were saying about how important your mum is to you. Like she certainly doesn't sound like a weak person.
No, definitely not. She's a very strong individual. She's raised me up right. From her upbringing as well, it was even tougher. So she knew that she'd have to keep it up to the point where making sure her children, like especially me now, being the man I am today, is like I've had to get through that upbringing, and definitely she'd have to fight a lot of like what's the word, like situations where it's like it could play in her mental and she might think like less of herself, but really she was able to have a strong mindset and able to conquer all of these like things that society can say about you. And even when you're on your own, her own personal experiences, she was able to like overcome them and be able to be like, okay, no, I'm not gonna let that affect how I'm gonna be to my kids. I'm not gonna be I'm just gonna block that. I know what I'm following. She's a strong believer in God as well, so she's literally, I feel like she's been like, obviously been helped by God, who like, she's like, yo, don't listen to them, listen to me. And then she's like, yeah, this is how you're supposed to raise your child. So for real, that's how I feel.
And I mean, the flip side of that is it's not always fair on men to be told like, you have to be strong, you have to be the man of the house, because why is that necessarily so? Like, I mean, like for instance, in my experience, when my father died, I was a teenager, and I've got two older sisters, but everyone was saying to me, you have to be the man of the house, you have to be the one who takes responsibility. And it's like you've ignored the fact that I've got two older siblings. It's mad, isn't it? And some of that is cultural, but it's so common, isn't it, where it's sort of seen as like the man has to be, even a man of like 18 years old has to be the one who's in charge.
Yeah, it's from a very early age. It's kind of like you're supposed to be the man, even if you're younger and your older sisters are like very old. Like they can still have that responsibility to look after you. And obviously, with the parents not being around at one time or point, they pass on that. They delegate kind of like the authority to the oldest. But if you're growing up in a house where it's like you're the boy and you're the youngest, they're still gonna try and tell you like you should be the man of the house. It's like the power is being, I feel like, mistreated, like misused, because the oldest would usually have more understanding. This is how it goes up in the house. I've been here longer. Whereas if you're passing it to someone like who's that age, they might mistreat it, misuse it, and then when they go out into the world from their house, then it's kind of like it's a mess at that point. You're not really like growing up in a place where like you just decide to look away from women. It's like, yeah, you're not the boss of me. I've got power. I'm the man of the house. I'm the man here. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like a lot of power is being mistreated a lot. So, yeah.
And part of that, I suppose, is this idea is if you've got to be strong, if you can't show weakness, then that means that you can't ever show yourself to be wrong and realize that you've made a mistake. And I suppose that's an issue in the dynamic between men, where if somebody's acting in a certain way and then a mate turned around and said, that's not all right, you shouldn't be speaking to a woman like that. Sometimes it's an ego thing, it's difficult to sort of, for that person to say, no, you're right, because the ego thing kicks in, doesn't it?
Yeah, 100%. I was just going to mention what Pascal started with that about the WhatsApp group message, and you were involved with the kind of betrayal of women in those group messages. And it's like, did you ever challenge it? Did you ever kind of acknowledge that's not right? I've been part of groups and it's happened. I've seen a picture and it demeans a woman. I'm like, why have I not challenged that? Why have I chosen to just ignore it? I don't respond to it, don't kind of humour it, don't accept it as a joke, but I don't say anything. And it makes me think I should do. And it's like, why is that away from me a little bit? But touching upon about a man's role in a household, obviously my father passed away when I was 21. So I've shaped my own opinions based upon who I am. I've not had that father figure for a long time. And I've lived with two sisters who are unbelievably strong. And my mum is just equally strong as well. So I think there's a conflicting message about whether or not you need a man in that household to kind of rule it. And I don't necessarily believe we need to kind of, every time you're a male, you need to be that power. You need to look after your family. It's dated, really dated now. It doesn't need to be that way anymore.
Well, some men just aren't, like, you same with women. You get some people who are incredibly confident and happy to take on responsibility, and other people who are quite shy and don't want that. And just because you're a man, you're expected to take that responsibility and act a certain way. And it's in a lot of ways, although it's power that's being given to you, it's not a nice thing.
No, I had no way I wanted to take that responsibility away from my dad. He chose to take his own life at 54, which was quite a massive change in my life. But I had no way I wanted to take that responsibility away from my mum for raising us. I wanted us to kind of grow together, work through this trauma in our lives and become better people because of it, on equality and terms, equal in terms of choosing our own destiny and fate. So yeah, I definitely agree on that.
And presumably you'll have experienced how, as well as your inner strength to cope with that, how other people in your family and women in your family were a strength to you.
Yeah, massively. My two sisters are incredibly supportive of me. I've had dark days as well. I've gone through depression and the fallout of not really accepting what happened to my dad. But that's down to mental health as well. He couldn't acknowledge his own problems and didn't know how to kind of communicate that away. But I think that's another subject in terms of how men conduct themselves. I think I wanted to kind of push my sisters on, allow them to maybe take a little bit more control away from me. I wasn't ready for it. So each household differs from another, 100%.
Well, my experience and from what I've seen and heard is that the women in my life, my mother, my sister, my wife, they feel comfortable and they have the network around them that they can open up and share those things, their doubts, their anxieties, their fears, but also hopes and dreams. And again, I think, unfortunately, when a lot of men are together, we're talking about banter earlier, there's this kind of like competitive edge, right? We're all like kind of sizing each other up, right? And who's the alpha in the group, and is it based on what you look like? Is it your job, your income, the car you drive? Like, where do I fit in here? Where do I belong? I don't particularly go to the gym, so I can't relate in that respect. But we all have things perhaps that we place value on. And again, I think we all just want to be treated as individuals and not judged differently just because we're men, for example.
Yeah. So it's almost as if again that gender imbalance. Mm-hmm. That is part of the reason why we have gender-based violence. Mm-hmm. That is detrimental to men as well. So one thing I've noticed is whether it's talking to talking to men, either in person, maybe at work, maybe on WhatsApp groups. There's definitely a way men talk to each other that's different when there's a woman there, when there's not. And sometimes that can be, in a lot of ways, harmless, but it's different, isn't it? The humour's different. Have you experienced that?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, unfortunately, I'd have to say that I've probably also been the one who's kind of, perpetrated some of this kind of sexist and misogynistic language, and, whether it's kind of inappropriate comments in the workplace or kind of banter when you're with a group of guys and, maybe you're out in a bar or a football match or something like that. And I think what's even harder is when you witness that is, being able to call that out. That can be very difficult, especially when there's a lot of testosterone, there's alcohol, and you don't know, or perhaps you kind of suspect how even the people you feel comfortable with and trust will take that. And again, that goes back to kind of masculinity and how, men are victims of toxic masculinity as well as perpetrating it, and the same of patriarchy. All of that creates this kind of this identity that you have to be tough, strong, have all the answers, not need anyone's help. And then it creates this kind of binary that, okay, so that's what it means to be a man, therefore to be a woman must be the opposite. And unfortunately, I think when you're dealing with those kind of binaries, instead of actually it's more of a spectrum, there's a lot of gray area in between, it creates these attitudes that oh, okay, so women are like that, they're different to me. And if I'm bigger, tougher, stronger, superior, that must mean that they are lesser, weaker, inferior, and therefore I can get away with making these jokes, especially in a group of men, because why would any of them call me out and challenge me? It doesn't affect them. They're not women.
Yeah, no, and in terms of that feeling about being able to speak up, and again, we talk about banter and things. Sometimes anyone who pipes up and kind of says, that's beyond a joke, that's not funny anymore, you can almost be treated like a killjoy, can't you? Of why are you bringing the mood down? We're just having a laugh. What's your problem?
Yeah. I think it's crazy when guys can just throw their whole morals out of the window just to be involved and included. It's I'm sat in the corner, silent. You don't want to kill the vibe, innit? So it's you know what? Let me try this one. It's a wild card. Let's see if it works. You say something completely mad, and it's just silence. Or you might, you know what I'm saying? Even if there's a female right there, there's a woman right there. It's rah. When people, have you heard that side eye? Side eyes are dangerous. I don't know if you guys know. Just notice it, and if you notice it, you'll look in the mirror and be why did you do that? Why did you say that? Sometimes it's just that self-reflection you need. You just don't say that sometimes.
Would you feel comfortable saying something if you were either in an environment or you were in a WhatsApp group where somebody said something that was offensive or?
Back then I didn't have the courage, but now I do. I've seen it a lot of times where it's nah, this is not right. And I believe in many situations I've been put there for a reason, just to speak up. This is not, why am I here witnessing this? I only have like-minded people around me. So when I'm seeing this in my vicinity, I'm thinking, this is an opportunity for me to create a new change in mindset. There's a word called metanoia, it's Greek. Change how you think. Let me create a new scenario in this place, in this WhatsApp group chat. Why would you say that? Give a self-reflecting question. It might come across rhetorical because we already know the answer. You shouldn't have said that, but just create an atmosphere for that person, because even if you're friends or you're friends of friends, you're mutuals, we don't really know you like that, but I know you enough to keep you accountable. I'm seeing something. We might be cool, this and that, but I'm still going to say, still going to speak up. Now I can speak up. Back then, I just let it slide. It was something for guys to just joke around with and that, you know what I'm saying? But now, it's banter in it. That's the thing. But now it's we should be speaking up. That's the thing. And
it's that thing about, we talk about strength and what strength means and what a man means, what it means to be a man. Surely speaking up and speaking up for somebody who needs your help or your allyship, that's strength, isn't it? That's a way of showing strength.
That's right. I mean, just holding each other accountable, because it's like, it can start with your friends, and as well, it's like you're learning, okay, my friend's seen something, he's my friend, so he can tell me this. If it was a random person, I might react differently, but this person's gonna tell me like, yo, don't do that, like, pattern up. Like, it's kind of like the stay on your toes, because you can get caught out and it will make you feel different, it make you feel this and that. You might even unlock a side of you that you never thought you had inside of you. So
I suppose it just goes to show that as much as we think of men generally being the perpetrators and women being affected, it affects us all. And then what becomes even more important is how we deal with it. And I think what we've come to, I think the conclusion we've come to is we need to do something about it.